Welcome. Hello. Welcome to this product strategy masterclass, where we'll be talking about designing for scale. And on this topic, we're actually going to be looking at moving from feature delivery to category creation. So a lot of product managers and product leaders have actually been stuck in this cycle of of feature delivery. They've been stuck in this cycle where it's all about um, moving from okay, what feature that outputs of focus without actually looking at creating a category, which is more about an outcome drive. So it's been about incrementalism, but here we are talking about how to create categories that will actually survive long-term situations and user usability over time too. So why do most products plateau? So what this simply means is that, there's this phase where products launch, they keep climbing, through that trajectory, but then they get to that peak where they plateau. It balances out and it straightens out. Looking at this graph, we can actually see a clear representative feature of what we're talking about. So the project launches Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, everything is going well, user adoption rates, customers are signing up and all that. And it climbs. And once it gets to some time, over here it says the second year and onwards, it just plateaus. Maintenance efforts also, plateaus and strikes out with it. So most products actually don't fail. They hit that plateau where everything seems stuck and stagnant. And the typical patterns we actually have for these products, there's this initial excitement and launch, where everyone is really excited about the launch. Everyone is happy. You're actually looking at some of those metrics, and at that point, some of those metrics may actually seem like vanity metrics. So vanity metrics are actually what I tag the feel good metrics that you look at and you feel satisfied. It doesn't really look at the core questions that it doesn't really answer the core questions that actually ensure that retention is still at that point, customer retention. So it just gives you this these metrics like what are the sign up rates, what are the usage rates and all that. So, but it doesn't really look at those critical elements that actually show that yes, this is actually a sustainable product that will actually carry on over time. So early adopters join, of course, the early adopters join, but then growth slows. It slows at some point. You're not growing anymore. You just stay stagnant. Revenue also stabilizes, and teams just shift to maintenance mode. So at that point, teams are just maintaining what they already have. There's no new addition of things. There is no, it's just about, how do we make the already existing features more robust to serve these numbers growing and all that. So, but that mindset needs to change. And the real risk is not failure, it's actually stagnation. So that's the food for thought. So the real risk is actually not the product failing. It's just that the product has hit stagnation. There's nothing else, going on for it. So this usually happens when we have this output sort of focus and drive around products. So, but the aim of this class is actually to take us to the outcome focus, where we're not just looking at features. We're actually looking at what systems are we building and what categories are we creating. So over here we have the feature trap. So these are the common pitfalls that some products actually face. So on the feature trap, you know, features when you're focused on an output situation mindset, you're actually optimizing for business and velocity. You're just shipping features, you're closing tickets on Jira or DevOps. You're planning for, you're looking at sprint velocity. What's your sprint velocity like? How many, your burn down charts and all that. So what's the velocity in this sprint? Are we meeting up to the release plans and all that? Then you're also looking at the release frequency, just as I said. So, and this does not really work, when you want to scale, when you actually want to, design for scale and expand and all that. So we have to move from that output focus to the skill mindset. And what does a skill mindset do? So the skill mindset moves you from a platform foundation to data and loops, and then you gain market power. So of course, with the skill mindset, you also have compounding value. That's where every value actually adds something to the previous one. You also have strategic moats, where you're actually at that level where you've come up with um, some solid sort of products that the market is actually after. So you also have the network effects and all that. So shipping more features doesn't automatically create more value. So feature delivery can keep you busy, but competitors build an advantage through systems. So the skill mindset actually gives you that strategic moat where you're actually at that level where you've built an advantage and your competitors actually see you as, yes, this is what we're talking about. So we are looking at moving us from the output focus to that skill mindset, the outcome focus. So we're going over here, we're talking about feature delivery versus skill thinking. So this is centered around a mindset shift. So we need to have a mindset shift from feature delivery to skill thinking. So feature delivery focuses on, solving immediate requests. So you're just reacting to customer noise. And the downside of this is that this leads to what we call technical debt. So technical debt is where you actually focus on small incremental, fixes to actually just gain some small quick success over long-term deliveries. And what this leads to is that you still have those long-term deliveries that will actually give you that advantage waiting for you. So it's more like a debt actually waiting at the end for you. So you also have reactive roadmaps. So you're always going to have reactive roadmaps because your priorities will keep shifting constantly. So you're also output focused. We've talked a lot on output. So your success means have we launched? Have we shipped it? Is the feature available now? So and you have a short horizon. You're always planning for the next sprint and the next sprint and the next sprint. On the other hand, scale thinking actually looks at compounding advantage. So it looks at, designing systems, not just features. So you're building engines, not parts. You're also anticipating compounding effects. So ensuring that value grows automatically. And you're also outcome focused. So your success moves from did we ship it or did the product launch or did this feature launch to did market power increase? Did our market share increase? So you also have long horizon. So you're not just planning for, the next sprint. You're actually planning for the next phase this time around. So we can see the differences between these two modes of thinking. So one is actually thinking around, let's just get that, quick release. But then it keeps you in this technical debt loop. And the other one, on the other hand, actually pushes you ahead. So it pushes you to that level, that platform where you actually gain that strategic advantage and competitive advantage and all that. So what does scale actually mean? A lot of times we hear scale, we hear scale, we hear scale. But some people actually get, this idea of scale wrong. A lot of people will say, scale is having more users, or your revenue is increasing, or you're having more features shipped out there. But you can also have features that people are not using. You can also have users, who don't really use your platform or your product from beginning to end. So scale is the ability to grow value faster than cost. So when you can grow value faster than cost, then that's scale. So you've been able to actually create something that is meaningful to people, and your cost, on the other hand, is also growing marginally compared to the value you're releasing. So the key principle here is that true scale means marginal cost decreases while impact increases. So if your cost rises with every customer, any new customer you have, your cost rises, then you're actually growing, but you're not scaling. So you're just, having more numbers. I mean, that growth. You get more users, it's growth, more revenue, it's growth, more features, it's growth, but you're not really scaling because, the ability to scale is where your cost is growing marginally or reduces marginally compared to the impact. The impact increases while the cost reduces. So it's more far-reaching than, you know, just having more users or more revenues and all that. And when we also look at this graph, we can see, where the value created is climbing, whereas the complexity and cost is, decreasing marginally. So we can see what scale actually means from this. So the aim is not to get it wrong with scale. A lot of times, people just focus, scale is just, once your users are growing, it's scale. No, it's not just that. It's also not just about your revenue alone growing. And it's also not just about more features being shipped. So we are looking at growth without scale here. So and what is the cost curve problem? So in many products, growth actually creates complexity, not leverage. So, when you're growing, things become more complex, but it doesn't really give you that advantage to, hold on to and gain market share. So, and how do you know that you're scaling in a linear format? So every new customer increases cost. So if at every point in time you have a new customer and cost increases, then you're actually growing, not scaling. So support burden also grows linearly. So the pressure to support and all that for support also grows along that way. So that's a sign of linear scaling. So infrastructure scales inefficiently. That's also a sign. And teams expand without leverage. So the food for thought here is that this is growth without scale. And the job is to redesign the system. So growth creates efficiency, not complexity. So growth normally should not make things more complex. It's about making things easier. So it shouldn't just be about, every new customer coming in, it's adding to the cost and all that, it's making support more burdensome and all that. No. So that is growth without scale. And we have to move from the shift from product to platform. So further down the line, we're also going to look at a case of how, a company can actually move from this product to platform. So so feature products. So a feature product looks at linear value, and it talks about, oh, we build, you consume, and it ends there. So there's also direct interaction, usually one to one. Growth is also limited by headcount. But on the platform side of it, so you have multi-sided value where users create value for each other. So the aim is that, if you have one user added, so how can that one user added, add value to the other existing users? So that's platform sort of shift. You also have ecosystem effect. Third parties extend utility. So the thing about platform thinking or, even outcome thinking is that it puts you at that level where we talked about network effects in the other one, where, third parties, partners and all that actually come together to, build API integrations, to collaborate, to work together so that everything is in-house. You see, so when you're creating these categories, it's not just about features this time around. When you're creating these categories, everything is in-house. You have the API integrations with the partners that you need, under one roof, making everything easier. So customers don't need to go out there to get what they want. They stay in-house. So also platform or system product is compounding. So interactions grow super linearly. Um, then we have market strategy. So category creation versus participation. So I've tagged category participation the red ocean and category creation the blue ocean. So category participation is just where you're playing in the field where others are, and category creation is actually where you carve that niche for yourself. You can also see that from this graphics by the right, where you have crowded markets. Everybody is just here, playing around. But category creation actually moves you to a different place. So, and the food for thought is don't fight for share, reshape the field. Another thing mistake people make is that when we talk about category creation, people think we are talking about reinventing the wheel. No, it's actually not about reinventing the wheel, but it's actually about, creating that niche where, people, customers, people, competitors actually see you, from a different angle. So on category participation, people compete inside existing definitions. So you don't go outside the rules. You play safe. You're just stuck within those definitions. There's also incremental improvements, which they feel is better. But again, we are talking about moving from the mindset of incrementalism to going towards category creation. So they also benchmark heavily against competitors. So it's always about, in many organizations, there's what they call this lead scoring. So for people in this category participation, they have these lead indicators is actually, what they focus on. These are the metrics they focus on. So how are we compared to the others, you see? But it should be beyond that. It should actually, come up heads above the others, and gain that strategic mode, that competitive advantage to actually create, when you create these categories. So on the other hand, category creation, which is the blue ocean, as you can see from the this, graphical display there, it redefines the problem entirely. So reframes buyer expectations and shifts the language of the market. So again, it's not about, reinventing the wheel. It's actually about redefining an existing problem. So on category participation, everybody looks at the problem certainly the same way. Because probably that's also why solutions are actually tilted toward the same angle. But when you look at category creation, it redefines the problem. It comes up with different definitions of problems, which also opens up a plethora of opportunities for creating categories. So the strategic questions skill requires. So a lot of times we product managers and product leaders, we ask what feature should we build next? So, but instead of that, we should actually look at what systems are we designing? So when you ask what features, sorry, should we build next? You're actually looking at, one of outputs, and that shouldn't be the case. You should look at engines of value creation. So we need to build engines of value creation. So the example here is, are you building a hand crank or a flywheel? As you know, the hand crank is a manual sort of thing, a machine that needs some manual input and effort, while the flywheel actually stores energy and makes systems more efficient at the end. So are we just still going to build something that people will still struggle to use, have a lot of manual input to it and all that? Or are we building a flywheel that cruise control, people just plug in and play? So also, what behaviors are we shaping? So the thing with category creation is that it should shape behaviors. It should actually make people see things in a different way, not just the norm. So if you have, let's say you have your chat platforms and all that, we used to have BlackBerry Messenger and all that, but WhatsApp came with calls, came with video recording, came with, you can even now set up meetings and all that. So, and it has shaped a new range of behaviors. So skill happens when user habits align with your model. So user habits should actually, because these were problems that they redefined. The main problem there was, yes, people need a way to communicate, but they've come up to redefine, Meta has come up to redefine that problem to say, okay, apart from communication, it's not just about chats. People should also be on calls. People should also be able to set up meetings from their handheld devices with phone numbers, which are very common, and all that. So that way they've shaped a new behavior. Are you designing for friction or flow? And it's not just about UI again. It's not just about user interface or user experience. Your design should actually be for flow. It should be seamless. It should be, very easy. That's the way to shape behaviors. So what network are we enabling? So again, as I said, value should increase as more people participate. How does user N add value for user n plus one. So what this simply means is how does the existing users add value for the new user coming up? And another question, or the fourth question here, is what structural advantage are we building? So if your roadmap is only about features, then strategy is missing, and it becomes, we should focus on what becomes harder for competitors to copy. So there's what we call in strategy, there's also what we call the VRIO metrics. So, and the I stands for inimitable. So, and that looks at, is it something competitors can easily copy? Is it something competitors can easily copy? So this is something we also should look at. So what structural advantage are we building? Because it's not just about thinking in category creation. Category creation shows that yes, you have to actually build an advantage, shape behaviors, enable networks, and design systems that create value, not just the hand crank, for my example. So, okay, yeah. So we talked about a case review. So this is no company there's no company in question here, but this is just about the ride-hailing evolution. So this looks at how ride-hailing apps actually evolved, platforms evolved. So at phase one, when the launched, then it was just yes, you're in a city like London, Lagos, Abuja, Brazil, New York, and yes, there's a problem. People need to move around. And there's this basic booking app, yes, I want to be here, I want to move from here to there. Manual driver onboarding. I remember sometime then in Lagos when, drivers would have to go to physical offices to actually onboard for Uber and the likes of them. Then simple distance pricing too. But, when you actually move, when you evolve, when you shift to scale thinking, it's around a whole new ecosystem design. So you can see where you've built that network where partners actually come on board. So you have driver support and retention, integrated payments. These days you now pay. There are many options, plethora of options to pay. Partnerships and APIs are also built, and there are also subscription models. So why does growth plateau? So there's actually a feature wall. So sometimes companies are in phase one, but what stands in the gap for them to get to, the scale thinking is that, there is no loyalty loops. So churn is usually high, and, incentives are tied to single rides only. And there's also zero ecosystem expansion. So this is actually just looking at the ride hailing sector. So scale comes from ecosystem design, not just feature accumulation. So the app is just the interface. The system is the product. Again, from the last slide, I said it. It's not just about interface. You can make your interface look very lovely. You can make it look very warm and attractive to people. But you can also hit that stagnation if you're not really moving to scale thinking. So moving to scale thinking is where you've actually scaled, like to the point from using the ride hailing platform. You've moved, towards having driver support and retention, integrated payments, everything on your platform, partnerships and API, subscription models. So, it also goes beyond this, but it's actually what the core thing that this focuses on. So, how do we design for network effects? So network effects occur when each new user increases the value of the product for other users. So again, with the N and N plus one example. So, and the design level, the levels for this design is actually cross-site liquidity. So you're balancing supply and demand ratios. So this example works perfectly with two-sided platform apps like ride-hailing apps and delivery apps and all that. So where you have buyers and sellers, you know where you actually balance these ratios. So you gain cross-site liquidity. That's a design level for you. So trust systems, that's verification and safety techniques. reputation mechanisms, reviews, creating accountability, then data compounding. So usage improves algorithms. So the usage should actually increase algorithms. Again, with data, you know, we also need to look at the right metrics, not just vanity metrics. So a lot of organizations are actually moving from, how likely are you to recommend to ease-based scoring. So ease-based scoring focuses on time to completion. You get to gain the real customer sentiments on how they felt about that product or platform. So they're also moving to demographic-based weightings, so it's not just about, bringing every survey together and just, summing it up. You actually look at the demographics. So who uses this app more than the other? How do we make the experience better for them? So a situation where you have more men using the app or more age or an age band using it more than the others, you know, then you should actually look at getting the sentiments for them tailored and all that. Yeah, understanding the sentiments and tailoring the usage, the platform for them, sorry. So without design, negative network effects take over. So leading to congestion, noise, spam, and churn. So now we are looking at the acquisition strategy. So growth funnels versus growth loops. So growth funnel looks at linear acquisition with high drop off. So you have linear acquisition with high drop off. Yes, the acquisition is on a straight line path, and then you have high drop-offs. So, and it's heavily dependent on paid marketing for a growth funnel. You have high drop-off and you have linear acquisition. So, looking at this funnel here, so we have the acquisition, we have activation, we have retention, and it's all closing in. So, value leaks out. So, when value leaks out on this model, and on growth loop, on the other hand, you have situation where compounding usage and adoption cycle works for you. So usage generates visibility. So when people use it, there's visibility. Visibility generates adoption, and adoption generates more usage. So it's a cycle it's a loop. You know, usage generates visibility, visibility generates new user adoption generates, more usage. So building defensibility. So what are the structural advantages for building defensibility? So we have data advantage. So proprietary data sets that improve prediction with scale. So you need to have proprietary data sets that actually improve prediction with scale. Again, it's about having the right sort of data metrics that actually would help you improve prediction with scale. It's not just about, usage patterns and all that. You need to drill deeper. So what are the usage patterns? How can we, improve predictive analytics capabilities with the data we have? So it's not just about generalizing, sorry. That's where the demographic based weighting and all the other metrics actually come in. So you look at, okay, how do we, what can we really gain from this? So distribution advantage. So owned channels that lower CAC below competitors. Ecosystem lock-in. So integrations that increase utility and retention. So you should actually look at integrations that actually increase utility and retention. Switching costs. So high operational frictions to leave the platform. So yes, so structural advantages to building defensibility is also high switching costs. So where people actually feel that there is actually a huge friction for me to move from this platform to another. So these are the advantages of building defensibility. So and the skill text here is what becomes harder for competitors to copy every single year. So again, drives us to the VRIO metrics, inimitability. So what becomes harder for competitors to copy every single year? So we have a technical strategy here, product architecture for scale. So scale collapses without scalable foundations. Architecture is not just code, it's the operational limits of your business. So You know, when we talk about scaling, um, we have what we call the core product architecture. Then we also have, flexible models that should be built to scale. So when you're looking at payments, for instance, you should have the core product architecture for payments, MT payments, PAX 008, 009 payments, and all that. But then beyond that, you should also have, flexible modules to actually take into account, the rate of scale and all that, probably the geographies you're going into and all that. So scale collapses without scalable foundations. So if you don't have scalable foundations, then it's almost impossible to scale. So, and again, architecture is not just code. When people hear architecture, they feel it's all about code and all that, but it's not. So we need to have modular systems. So decoupled components that can scale independently. So you need components that can actually scale independently. So when you look at language modules, for instance, you need those components that can scale independently. Remember, when you're scaling, you're also expanding. You're expanding to new geographies, you're expanding to new territories, you're expanding to new places. So your systems and components must be designed to actually take into account of these expansions. So API first thinking, every feature is a service available to the ecosystem. So every system must be a service that is available to the ecosystem. So again, this brings us to the fore where we talk about, partnerships, having these APIs of integrations available. Automation first ops. So eliminates human intervention for core workflows. So, product architecture for scale actually looks at eliminating human interventions for core workflows. So everything should be automated and easy for the user. There shouldn't really be human interventions. The next point, self-service onboarding, also buttresses that point. It should enable users to discover, sign up, configure, and activate without manual support. So, users should actually do things seamlessly on their own. Then embedded analytics, again, it's always very important. Analytics, so where you have real-time insights built directly into the product, where you so that users can actually measure their performance and make decisions without leaving the platform. So if you embed these analytics in your platform, so users don't need to go out to look for a third-party app or to look for a browser or whatever to actually see, okay, what is actually going on and how can I do things better. So embedding real-time analytics into your platform or your product enables users to to measure and make decisions real time without, leaving the platform. So the critical question for product architecture is, are we building for the next quarter or for the next order of magnitude? So are we building for the next quarter? Are we building for the next order of magnitude? So here we can see the increasing value, how you increase value and all that. So foundation layer, where you have your cloud infrastructure, data lakes, the security, identity, and all that. You go to platform services and APIs, where you integrate payments, messaging, search, analytics APIs into your platform. Then you go to modular business logic, where you have pricing engines, um, matching algorithms, inventory support, and all that. Then experience layer, mobile app, web portal, partner API, admin dashboard. So people in mortgages, for instance, actually have a lot of this. When you talk about pricing engine, matching algorithms, and all that. So even loans also point you to this point there. So from roadmap to the strategic planning from roadmap to strategic narrative. So this is also a case where we're looking at. So year one, where you establish foothold. So here you validate core product value, establish initial retention, secure early adopters. So year two, on the other hand, where you expand. So year one is your foundational phase. The year two is the expansion phase, and the year three is the dominance phase. So for year two, you're looking at expanding ecosystem. So here you're strengthening loops, you're introducing growth loops, expanding integrations, APIs again, you know, cross-site liquidity focus. And layer three, where you now gain dominance, you're looking at category dominance. So you're the industry standard, remember. So you're the industry standard where you've gained that strategic moat, where you've gained that competitive advantage. You're the default choice. There is high switching cost for users. You know, users actually look at it that, leaving this platform or this product, there will be a lot of friction to move. Then there's also structural lock-in. You get, you've locked in, you know, the platform and all that. Yeah. So feature roadmaps list outputs. Scale roadmaps tell a story. So feature roadmaps list outputs. So when you have roadmaps that are, you know, feature based, it's just about outputs. Okay, what are we releasing this sprint? What do we have for release one? What do we have for release two? When is the deadline for release one, two, three, four, and the rest? Or scale roadmap tells a story. So when you're scaling, when you have a roadmap that focuses on scale, then it tells a story, a story that transcends, you know, what you have for various releases or what you have for various sprints, you know, a story that actually looks at you gaining category dominance, expanding and gaining category dominance. So the scale cost function, the physics, economics physics. So if cost grows linearly with every new user, the business model is weak. So true scale stabilizes cost while value compounds. So if every new user you have adds up to the cost, then you know that's a weak business model. So cost should actually be stabilized as value increases. So that's actually, you know, how you know that you're getting to that level of category creation. So the levers to actually flatten cost. So what are the leverages you have to flatten cost? So reduce manual operations burden. So when you reduce manual operations burden, you're saving cost on, you know, resources, of course, because when there is a lot of manual inputs in operations, you also need to have the people who would support the users. So the other point is self-service, empower users to solve own issues. So you should also make things seamless for the users. Standardization limits bespoke exceptions. So a scalable product feels lighter over time, not heavier. So when you have a scalable product, it should feel easier and less complex for you, and for your users also, not heavier, not the other way around. So, so what are the organizational barriers to scale? So here we have incentive misalignment. So quarterly targets usually reward shipping output, not system leverage. So for people in, you know, products and all that, we notice this all the time. You know, quarterly targets actually reward, okay, what can we ship by the end of Q1? What can we deliver by the end of Q3? But we should actually focus on system leverage. You get, what advantages are we, you know, building? What competitive advantages are we building? Are we having at the end of this quarter? Not just about, you know, what's in for release one, what's in for release two. Sales driven roadmap. So reactive features to close deals display strategic investments. So we need to move from sales driven roadmaps. So it's all about, sales driven, sales drive. We need to move from that. We need to have strategic incentives and investments, sorry, against sales driven roadmaps. So fear of experimentation. Culture penalizes failure rather than rewarding learning. So in organizational leadership, there are actually two arms. There should be, you know, reward, and while there should also be sanctions, but some organizations actually, you know, intertwine these. So you should have a culture that, you know, rewards learning. Not if you reward it, yeah, if you change the wording, you say penalize failure. No, it should actually be about rewarding learning. So not just, you know, when people fail, you penalize them and all that. That kills innovation. That kills, you know, that kills drive. People are actually more reclusive when it comes to, you know, innovating or experimenting. So organizational culture is also part of it. So strategic ambiguity, lack of a clear North Star for what scale actually looks like. So product managers must translate scale bets into outcome leadership. So outcome leadership actually cares about efficiency, retention, and market power. Skill thinking requires executive alignment. If you don't have executive alignment, if you don't have the management behind you, skill thinking is actually very difficult. So we can see from these organizational barriers that there's a lot of input, founders, organizational leaders, and all that also have to play in skill. So incentive, they have to align incentives. They have to move from sales driven roadmaps. They also have to reward learning against penalizing failure. And that actually brings about that transformation to scaling from thinking about output. So designing for behavior change. So how do we design for behavior change? Product scale when they change behavior permanently. So if users only visit when they remember, you have weak retention. So users shouldn't only be there are certain questions to ask around category creation. So and one of them is, do users only visit your platform or your product or use your product when they just remember or when they just feel like, it's been ages? So we need to design for habit formation. So, and how do we do this? Onboarding. So what identity are we helping users to adopt? So we need to have the tactics for that is interactive tours, progressive profiling, empty state education. Incentives, on the other hand, is another point. So what frictions are we eliminating? So on the other hand, we have defaults. What choices are we simplifying? And trust. What risks are we removing? So remember, data transparency is also one of the risks that you're removing to build trust. So data transparency is one of the tactics that we need to implement to actually build trust. So we need to remove risks. We need to, make onboarding easy. We need to add incentives. We need to make choices simpler for the users. So the key goal is to move from usage to identity. So a practical framework is, identify compounding assets. So when you identify compounding assets, data usage improves products, network users add value to user. So distribution channel dominance, strengthen feedback loops. So retention habit formation. So form a retention habit, referrals, viral mechanisms, reuse content recycling. Then you also reduce marginal costs, expand the ecosystem, and reposition the narrative. So features should actually have a Pareto principle or rule where 20% should be features and 80% should be around systems. So if most of your roadmap do not improve one of these 5 areas, you're likely trapped in maintenance mode. So your roadmap has to improve, at least one of these. Either you're identifying compounding assets or you're strengthening feedback loops or reducing marginal cost or expanding the ecosystem or repositioning the narrative. So early signs you're thinking at scale. So how do you even know we've talked a lot about scale. So how do you even know, how does it signal to you that yes, we're actually moving in the right direction? So you track retention obsessively. So you prioritize cohort health over top line vanity metrics. So again, vanity metrics. So you prioritize cohort health over top line vanity metrics. So you prioritize leverage over speed. So you build systems today that speed up work tomorrow. So you kill non-compounding features. Any debt heavy feature that doesn't drive loops, kill it off. Yeah, you prune it. You invest in architecture early. So you treat API readiness as a product feature, not technical debt. So from the start, API readiness has to be there in place as a product feature. Then you measure lifetime value, you optimize long-term lifetime value, or not just sign-ups, over sign-ups. So if your only success metrics is shipping, you will ship yourself into a plateau. So if you're just focused on shipping, what are you going to ship the next sprint or the next quarter? Then you're actually going to ship yourself into plateau, where you're now in maintenance mode. So the bigger idea, most teams ship products, few teams design categories. So scale is engineered, not accidental. It requires moving up the hierarchy of value. So feature delivery keeps you alive, category creation makes you dominant. So the difference is compounding advantage. So here you're at feature delivery where you're shipping outputs and closing Jira tickets, then to system design where you're looking at scalable foundations and architecture, um, ecosystem and loops, network effects and compounding. Then the next is the crown. You're actually at the head, category creation, where you've redefined the market problem. So closing thought, the final takeaway, if your roadmap disappeared tomorrow, would your system still compound? So if your roadmap disappears or goes away tomorrow, will your system still compound? So this is actually the most steps for scale. Feature delivery stops growing the moment you stop shipping. Through category creation, build a system that gains momentum on its own. So the action plan is out there for us. We need to strengthen one loop. And by doing that, we need to identify one specific user behavior that generates more users or activity. We also need to remove friction from that specific cycle. So another point is removing one cost driver. So find a process where cost grows linearly with users. Manual onboarding, for example, it has to go because manual onboarding, as I said, cost will always grow with new users because every point in time, you need, manual efforts in terms of support, in terms of onboarding, in terms of everything. So it needs to be eliminated or pruned. Sorry. Then design an automated alternative. Then build one advantage. Um, so we need to build one advantage for our system. So this is actually an immediate action plan for the next 30 days for us. And this is actually how we can get through to, category creation and moving from output-based thinking to outcome-based thinking, category creation, and, platform and system-based thinking. So thank you very much. And I hope you've learned a lot from this. Thank you.